We'll get back to
But
that.
the next topic is pretty good.
So
before we get to Zack Meisel at 12:30, I saw a list on a certain network, and Bull said bad job out of me. So I went to MLB.com.
I didn't even know, where did you see that list?
Especially because it was from some slappy nobody ever heard of.
Well,
I saw it on
Odyssey.com.
By the way, that list wasn't vastly different from MLB.com's list.
No, it wasn't at all.
It was extremely, because there's really not a lot of variance when you get into the top 30. We all know who they are. It's just a matter of how you rank them.
Oh, you got the list?
No, so now I was just trying to. I'm sorry, I got thrown off.
That's all right.
So the question is, who's the better player, Francisco Lindor or Jose Ramirez?
It's not even close.
It's not even close.
It's not.
When you sent that, I'm like, is anybody going to say Frankie?
Does anybody want to make an argument for Frankie?
I'll try to make the argument.
I mean,
okay, go ahead.
I mean, when did I think Jose is better, but when did Jose become better than him? Because I thought at the time Frankie was better.
Well, it's interesting.
And
Frankie's arc was higher at one point.
And then he caught him, and then it was over.
And he passed him.
Yep.
The thing with when they first both came up, like Lindor was a superstar prospect, and Ramirez wasn't even a prospect.
No,
not even a prospect.
Nobody expected him to be this guy.
No, you thought he. And when he first came up, and I first saw him play, I was like, oh, he's a nice player. I didn't expect him to be. Nobody did.
I thought he was too small.
There is nobody.
Honest.
Mike Chernoff, Chris Anthony, none of them thought he'd be this.
Nope.
Not.
Same with Oscar Gonzalez. Not that he's reached that status, but Oscar Gonzalez was like,
a shocker.
He's a guy.
Yes,
That's
but
it.
now, I mean, I would say since. What year is this? 23. I would say since at least 2019, probably. That Jose's
About
past
2019.
him.
So
could I make the? I think Jose's better, but could I make the case for Lindor just to present both sides?
Yeah.
For their careers.
Yeah.
Jose's played 2 more seasons.
Yep.
Or really a season and a half. He only played half of his first season. But for their careers, Jose's numbers are a 279 batting average, 192 RBIs, 192 home runs, 666 RBIs, which we have to do something about. That's not a good number for him to be sitting on for RBIs.
So much better, many better stats than that, but okay.
I'm just giving you the base. I'm gonna get to the analytics in a sec. And at a .857 OPS, Lindor's played 2 fewer, a season and a half fewer.
Yeah.
277 batting average, 184 home runs, 581 RBIs, and a .816 OPS. In a more premier position at shortstop, where defensively the difference does make a little bit of difference. And defensively, in career WAR, Lindor's double Jose plus some. He's at 10.4.
Well,
Jose at a 5.4.
That's apples
Just
to oranges.
defensive WAR.
That's apples to oranges.
Once again,
I think defensive WAR is completely flawed.
I do too, especially when
analysts
you're comparing a shortstop to a third baseman.
Yeah, I don't love defensive WAR at all.
So what that tells you is the gap between Frankie and all the other shortstops is greater than it is between Ramirez and all the other third basemen. But I think they're more. I think we found this when we ranked the third baseman. They're all kind of right there.
They're the same.
Where Frankie is an elite shortstop, I'll give you that. But I just look at the whole package. I look at the intangibles, leadership.
Listen, I'm not picking Jose. I mean, I'm picking Jose. I'm not picking Lindor. I'm just giving you the case to make.
Yeah, and if you look at career numbers too, early in their careers, Lindor was better than Ramirez in the first couple of years. And so if you look at their stat, I bet you if you just looked up their stats since like 2019 or 2018, Ramirez is way better than Lindor.
Lindor took a dive after his first year with the Mets was abysmal.
Right.
There was a stretch. Now, he did pick it up late in the year. He got hot in August
the first
and September.
half he was particularly hot.
Even after the All-Star break, I looked at his numbers, and his numbers were he was hitting like 220 with single-digit home runs.
He finished the season 270 batting average, 26 home runs, 170
Got
RBIs.
red hot. Look at his August and September.
No, it was 2 different
but
seasons.
I still think the difference between the two, it's the intangibles.
I agree.
just think that Jose Ramirez is a guy who collectively makes everybody on the team better by the way he goes about his job, his effort. Both are top step of the dugout guys. I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I think Lindor's good intangibles too.
And so he's good in that area, but I just think for my money, I look at what it would have cost to keep Frankie in Cleveland. And now he got the hometown discount. He gave
the best deal in baseball.
It's the best deal in baseball, and you can make an
Maybe the
argument
best
it's
deal
the
in
best
sports.
deal in pro sports.
It's the best deal in baseball of guys who could have been free agents.
But of guys who've actually signed a long-term deal.
There's guys who signed long-term deals pre-arbitration.
No, yeah, those don't count.
Yeah.
Those don't count. What Ramirez did was what was the number? 100 million?
147 for 140
No,
or something like that.
the estimate was he left $100 million.
at least.
Absolutely.
Like
at least.
nobody
Machado
does
just
that.
got 350.
Frankie, and to be perfectly honest, I know that some think Machado is better, but I see him every day, and I'm probably biased, but I would take Jose.
And even if you think he's better, he's not $200 million.
Machado's
better.
a better defender than Jose is, but
Wait, he's not.
You sure about that?
Wait, what did you say?
That Machado's a better defender than Jose.
I don't know that he is.
He wasn't by the.
I don't think he is. I think
It
I
wasn't
think
this
we're-
past year.
That's why I
I
put
gotta
Jose
tell
and
you,
love him in our
Ramirez
ratings.
for his size, when you stand next to him, you're like, wow, how does he
He's
cover
not a
as
big
much
dude.
range? No,
He's a
but
good defender.
He gets to
but
everything.
it doesn't even matter. Even if you do argue that, I actually think Jose overall is a little better than Machado.
I do too.
I think it's. But even if you say they're tied, or even if you say Machado's a little better, he's making way more money.
He's probably
Not even close.
top 5 highest paid
And
players.
Jose's only missed. I know he was injured last year, and that affected his play.
Yeah.
But he's only missed due to injury a significant amount of time once in his career, whereas Machado has had that.
I'll
few
turn
times.
the injury last year into a positive, okay? Most players, in Jose's case last
out.
year,
Right.
they're done. They get the surgery, they're
Right.
done. He needed the surgery when the injury happened.
Yes.
He knew that a 70% Jose Ramirez might get the Guardians into the playoffs, and who knows once we get there what can happen. He is selfless as a player and as a person. So when most guys hear that they've got a cracked bone in their thumb, they're like, well, let's fix it. He didn't do that. He played through it, and I know it's not good that he got hurt. Injuries happen. It's not like he's injury prone. But what I loved about how he handled the injury last year was we didn't even know it. We didn't know how bad it was. We knew something was wrong.
Yeah, he wasn't playing as well.
He wasn't playing as well, and we knew that they kept him out a couple games, and we knew he was nursing it. But as soon as the season was over, what do we hear? Ramirez is going in for surgery.
Yeah, Ramirez is top of the line in terms of intangibles. I actually think Francisco Lindor is very good in terms of intangibles, too. I think he's a good leader, too. He's just not as good as Ramirez. They're both excellent players. I'd love to have Lindor still on this team. But that trade, even though we can get into an argument over spending money, but in the end, the Guardians made a fantastic trade. They got 2 really good players out of it.
I look at it like this. It's kind of fascinating because when you look at Francisco Lindor, you don't even really you don't hear his name.
Well, we don't hear it here. He gets a lot of talk in baseball circles.
Well, no, I mean, you don't hear, like, for players being as good as he was.
And he was popular. He was the most popular player when he was here.
Most popular. It's almost like we don't, like in retrospect, we don't, I don't want to say show him any love, but it's almost like we don't mention his name anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of stricken for the record.
Well, because, and you don't, we're not hating on him because the guys he got have been great.
Right. So it's just like he just disappeared. Like, so it is hard because before, a player like Tommy, people was like, man, people like Cliff Lee, people like CeCe Sabathia, those guys, people were upset when they left. Francisco was different. Didn't he get moved during COVID?
No.
Or was it prior to it? 19?
Yeah, no.
No, he was still here for the COVID season, which was short.
Yeah.
His numbers were
He got
terrible.
traded after the COVID
His
season.
numbers, remember, and that was the other thing that to me, I know there was a big debate, should we keep him? I was never in the camp of even considering keeping Frankie Lindor, ever. I knew there was no way. I knew he was going to command way more money than this market would allow this team to spend on one player.
Now, do you feel like there's a price limit for any player?
I know it when I see it. The $30 million a year for one player, this organization can't do that.
Well,
they
choose not
So
to.
it's case to case. Like but you would do it for some people.
I would, but I'll give you example after example of teams in similar size markets that tried it and it failed miserably.
Right.
It's hard to build a baseball team around one player.
It's just
Very hard.
Yeah.
Listen, the bottom line to me is they could spend it. They're not going to, but that doesn't matter. In general, forget small market.
They could if
in
the
general
owner wanted
when
to go
you
deep in
spend
debt.
huge. In general, when you spend huge money on a player, it usually doesn't work out. Whether you're a big market now, the big market team can deal with that failed contract. But either way, 80% of big contracts fail for the team.
So your point about big markets are more equipped to deal with it, the Yankees just write checks to buy their way out of those holes. And they've done it too. They've signed $30 million a year players that did not work out.
A lot of them.
A lot of them.
And,
you can look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers, I think, have a better track record on big money spends than the Yankees.
The Red Sox have been terrible with it, too.
The Red Sox have had recently some terrible misses.
Ones, yep.
Those markets can do that. They can afford to do that. And we can argue all day whether or not the Dolans could spend more money. Of course they could. What I admire most about them is their fiscal responsibility. So could they have written that check? Yes, they absolutely could have written that check. But they're going to constantly be chasing what the Tigers were chasing for the last decade after they signed Miggy. That was a death knell for them.
I would argue, though, that the Guardians have a so much better front office.
They do.
However, in the end, they made such a good trade, and that it didn't matter. It ultimately didn't matter that they didn't sign Lindor because they made such a good trade. They didn't need him.
And that was part of my rationale of why they didn't have to sign him.
Right.
Why would you do that?
But it's still frustrating for fans, Jay, that none of their best players stay.
Ramirez
now, Jose is going to, but most of the great players gone. And now one of the guys you got in that trade, Rosario, this is probably his last year on the team.
Well, they got Jimenez.
No. I know that, but right. But eventually he's probably going to go too.
I'm on a different line of thinking than you are. I'm thinking they're going to eventually see the value in Rosario. They're going to keep him.
Where are they going to play him, though?
It's my hope.
I think the better hope is they can lock up Jimenez now.
We'll see. But when I hear stories like I've heard from guys that are around the team every day, how much Tito loves him and how much he appreciates what he brings to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
It's easy to discard a guy. Like, I know that Landry's talent was going down, but at some point the question should have been asked, is it worth to keep him around for his personality, what he brings to the team in other areas? Everybody credited him for turning the tide here with mentality.
It's the Nick Chubb concept, right? It's the
Nick Chubb is productive.
Nick Chubb's good and Jarvis Landry's finished.
Right.
But at some point, you're not going to, even at this point, Nick Chubb's worth to the Browns is more than on the open market.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So even if as he diminishes it almost, I'll come into Miami Heat. Udonis Haslem is on the bench.
Right.
They keep cutting him checks. You know why?
Yeah.
Because he
serves
a purpose.
And that's why the talk of trading Nick Chubb is laughable, because you're not getting a huge.
No.
He's worth so much more than you would get from a trade. But circling back to Rosario, thinking about Rosario, the only reason I think they do have a chance to keep him is because he's not a power hitter. He's not going to get a big contract. Ahmed Rosario's not getting $100 million plus.
Which is why I think we should
keep
him.
Could sign him.
I think we should.
I think if you offered him, I can't think of, I'm trying to think how old he is.
What was the number? Do we have the Rosario?
There was no Rosario.
There was no for Rosario.
He wasn't in Rosario, no.
I think Rosario, you're looking at 4 years, like an Encarnacion type of deal.
And to me, I think that's a good spend.
And maybe maybe
they've got some other minority owners now that can help defray some of that expense.
I think an example for the Rosario deal may be similar to what Andrew Benintendi just signed with the White Sox, which I think was 5 for $75.
And I think he's the same kind of
same level of player,
but he fits the same role.
Not a lot of power, good at getting on base.
Go ahead. You got to do a read.
Our 12 o'clock hour is brought to you by Call It Racing. Call It Racing, your Northeast Ohio NASCAR team, and we welcome in Zack Meisel to the conversation.
What's up, Zack? Hey, Zack, before we bring you in, we are so happy to have you with us. But shout out to the chat, by the way. We had Shield NA, Phil Bowman, and Derek Parso gift other people memberships today.
Look at that.
We have gifted 7 memberships. Shield did 5 himself.
Is that like you pay it forward at the Starbucks?
Pay it forward at
line?
Starbucks. Yep. So shout out to those guys. We love you guys. Thank
Zack,
you. Y'all are
well
the best.
done.
What's up, Zack?
By the way, Zack. So Zack is my buddy and I bought tickets today for the Lake County Captains game that you are featured at. Tell these guys, because they might not know about this, Zack, why you're going to be, I don't know what you're doing exactly there, but why you're going to be performing or being honored a Lake County Captains game this year. Explain it to these guys.
Oh, I should probably know the date offhand. I want to say it's...
I think it's in June, right? June 16th. June 16th.
Friday of Father's Day weekend, I think.
Yeah.
How did you know it?
Because we just bought tickets, my friend and I.
Okay.
So it's going to be random Jersey night at Classic Park, and so they're encouraging everyone, wear your Trent Dilfer Browns jersey, wear your Wesley Person Cavs jersey, whatever you can dig out of the closet or maybe find on eBay. But the more random, the better. And that's kind of my shtick on Twitter. So I guess I'm going to be judging people. I don't know. We haven't hammered out the full details yet, but it should be fun.
What jersey are you
Bull
wear,
has
Bull?
a Baker Mayfield jersey. Does that count?
I have a Derek Anderson. I don't know if that's random because he was really good that year.
You got to wear the Baker.
I'm gonna have to buy a new one. No, not Baker. Baker's not random. I'm gonna get an old school. I gotta find somehow a random Indians jersey that I'm gonna go buy.
Jerry Dibzinski.
Yeah, like a Jerry Dibzinski. But Zack does this on Twitter all the time.
Give me that Corey Schneider boy.
28.
No, but again, Corey Snyder's not random. He's too good to be banned.
It would be
when Zack tweets out pictures. He does this. He tweets out pictures like it's got to be some schlub who played like 13 games for the Guardians.
You didn't even know that player sold jerseys.
Right? You're like, who is that? The guys you tweet out, most general Cleveland sports fans would probably not even know who that player was.
So the first one we had here in Arizona this year was Mark Zepchinski, which I think people remember that name because it's so long and has not enough vowels. But this jersey, he pitched in Cleveland from 2013 to 15. But this particular jersey was from when he came back in 2018, and he pitched 2 innings. He used that jersey for 2 innings, and this person had the jersey. So we're looking for that degree.
That's right.
Of randomness.
That is impressive.
That is.
Who was the guy? I can't think of his name now. Who was the guy who pitched the playoff game against the Blue Jays for the Indians in 16? Left-handed
Ryan
pitcher.
Merritt.
Ryan Merritt.
Oh my God.
That would be random.
Wow.
Ryan Merritt. I mean, it was.
I don't think we've seen one.
No, I might have to get a Ryan.
I bet you don't.
I have to find one. I have to impress Zack.
Zack, what is the most random jersey you have come across, though? Like, what is number one on your list of most random jerseys?
So it's when you think about the criteria, it's you want someone who didn't play for very long. I think the older the better, but you don't want it to be too old because you want people to say, oh yeah, I vaguely remember that person. So I do a top 25 list at the end of every season. And every year I think, man, we're going to run out. We've seen everybody. And fans blow me away and they give me enough material to use. So I'm trying to think like,
oh man,
who was number one last year?
The best are like that utility infielder who played like 7 games in 1999. Like somehow someone has his jersey. So one of the more fun ones was 2 years ago, Cleveland traded Eddie Rosario at the deadline. And to make the salaries work, the Braves sent back Pablo Sandoval.
Oh yeah, right.
He never even came to Cleveland. He was released like 3 hours later, but someone went and customized Pablo Sandoval.
Well,
number
they did
48.
that just for you. They did it just for you.
I mean, that's the best. That is the. I don't know if that can be topped.
No, that is. No.
He never wore a Cleveland uniform.
The Kung Fu Panda in Cleveland.
I mean,
I had no
amazing.
idea he even came to Cleveland.
He didn't.
Oh my God.
He just
on
paper for 3 hours.
Technically, an Indian.
That's fantastic.
All right, Zack, we were just having this conversation. I don't know if you heard the end of the conversation. We were talking about the possibility of re-signing Rosario. I assume he's going to be gone after this year, but I said to Jay, okay, because he thinks they may sign him. I said, well, maybe, because he's not going to make huge money like Ramirez or certainly like Lindor. I said maybe 4 years, 65 for 75. Am I way off on his value? Am I underselling him, or is he in that range? And is it possible the Guardians would do it?
I think the thing working in his favor is this class of free agent shortstops this winter is the opposite of the one we just saw. So you had Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts landing huge deals. There's nobody. Rosario is
he'll be the
head of the class
valedictorian
this winter.
Yeah.
So I think of someone like Didi Gregorius. I think he got 4 years, $72 million maybe with the Phillies a few years ago. Something like that probably makes sense just because of the market. You know, if it was a better shortstop market, maybe it drives down his price a little. I think the odds are against something happening in Cleveland, mostly because they need to still figure out what to do with all these middle infield prospects. You know, Gabriel Arias needs opportunities, Tyler Freeman, Brian Rocchio, Angel Martinez. So you either have to trade the kids and sign Rosario, or you have to let Rosario walk and then let the kids play.
Is it a situation where we'll get to find out? I mean, there's probably a lot of at-bats available in spring training. Are we going to see some of these kids so we can see if one of them can separate from the group as a potential replacement to Rosario if they let him walk?
That's the struggle. Rosario's been so consistent in his career that odds are he's going to do what he always does: hit 280, steal some bases, play every single day. So
see, that's why
they're struggling with
right
that
in front of us. I think he's
you're struggling with that decision because Rosario, Jimenez, those guys play every day. So how many at-bats are there really for Gabriel Arias? That's why he and Tyler Freeman are working in the outfield. But this is a dilemma they've been facing for a couple of years now, and they know they need to make a trade at some point, consolidate some of these prospects because they're all bubbling up. They're all in AA, AAA, ready for the majors. But there's only 2 starting spots in the middle infield. Jose Ramirez is going to be your third baseman for a long time. So where do you play these kids? How do you learn about them while also not sacrificing production in the short term because you're trying to win?
Yeah. How old is Rosario?
27,
I would guess 26 or 7.
I think he's 20. He's 26 or 27. I don't know when his birthday is.
See, I know that sometimes we get enamored by 21, 22, 23, but a lot of times in baseball, those guys never percolate. They never develop. And because we've got a guy, I think first of all, I think strength is up the middle, and I want to think long term. Let's solidify that with guys like Zack just said. He's a known commodity. We know what he's going to give us. We don't know what the kids are. I would just rather stay with the guy that you know and lock him up. I know it's not the Guardians' way.
Yeah.
But
and trade the kids for pitching.
Yes.
Yeah,
Zack,
that's what I was saying.
Package them up and get a pitcher.
Mike, I know you want to jump in, but since we got this whole, as you know, I've been screaming about trying to trade for Brian Reynolds for a couple of months, but now I've changed my mind. I look at the Guardians' rotation, and I think about a potential playoff rotation, and I would rather them have somebody that's not here be their third starter. I don't trust Plesac. I don't trust Savali. I'm fine with Quantrill as your 4. We know you're good at 1 and 2. I think they should, whether it's now or more likely the trade deadline, I think I've changed my mind. Now, I know they have Daniel Espino, even though he's hurt, and Bibby, or however you pronounce his name, but I think I like the idea of trading for a good young pitcher who maybe has 2 or 3 years of control and trading some of these young prospects. What do you see that as a possibility this season at some point?
I think it's difficult to forecast what the team might need and who might be available on the market come July, but I think that's probably the most likely scenario. I think, Jay, to your point, Ahmed Rosario was a top 3 prospect in baseball. So if Gabriel Arias gives you what Rosario has given you, you're probably thrilled. But
you are, but you can't project that.
Right, but that's his point.
I get it. I get it.
I think what makes it tough is if this was a situation like Cincinnati or Oakland, you let the kids play, take their lumps, and you'd be fine with that. And then once they're ready to be good players, you figure you're probably contending. But this team's already there. They sped up the process almost too quick. Obviously, you want to win when you can win, but it's just made for some challenges here. And I think they're going to get to a point where, we've already seen it. They trade Nolan Jones for a younger prospect to kick the can down the road. They've done that with some other guys, and you're going to have to keep doing that. Or the other option, consolidate some prospects, which they've done in the past. They did it in 2016, and they're going to have to make another move like that this year. I think we'll have a better grasp for what their needs are in June and July. But you're right, Bull. I think rotation makes sense because, you had Quantrill facing Garrett Cole twice in a 5-game series. That's not going to work out for you most of the time. So they need another starting pitcher to help bridge the gap too, because you've got these 3 really good starting pitching prospects, but as Daniel Espino's shown you, injuries are always going to be a factor.
That's right.
And there's no guarantee there. And I don't know that those guys are going to help you this October. Right. You're more likely to sort of ease them into things next year and see where you go from there. But in terms of 2023, I'm guessing starting pitching is going to be what they need. And they don't need back of the rotation types. I think they need another horse that they can trust, like Bieber and McKenzie.
Yep.
Zach, this is my first full season of Guardians baseball in Cleveland. I moved here mid-April of last year, and we had Will Brennan on the show a couple weeks ago, and he was awesome. So he's now my favorite Guardian. So please, Zach, tell me why Will Brennan is going to be in the MVP race in 2023 here.
Well, why wouldn't he be?
How'd you guys settle on him? Because it's interesting. I don't think many people know much about him yet, and yet he might have the most colorful colorful personality in the
He was
clubhouse.
great.
And I hope he gets a chance to showcase his skills this year, just so that people can kind of see that personality. He's hilarious. All he's ever done is hit. You look at his minor league numbers. Last year I think he was hitting 311 at AA. They bumped him up to AAA, and he hit even better. Comes up in the major leagues and looks like a regular. And then he was saying that in Yankee Stadium in the playoffs, like, he couldn't feel his hands and his feet, and his heart was pounding out of his chest. And he's like, "How the hell did I get here? I was in AA a couple months ago." But he's just a genuine dude, and I think the reason why I think this team is in a good spot is if Oscar Gonzalez falters, if Miles Straw falters, you have Brennan there. They have contingency plans for most spots on the roster, and I think Brennan in the outfield, if they need him to get 400 at bats, I think he'd thrive.
I know it was a hypothetical, but you did say if Oscar Gonzalez struggles. And one of the things, obviously, that led the Guardians to all the success they had last year was they just kept – it's lightning in a bottle, but not when the Guardians do it. They just were bringing these guys up, and they were all contributing, and some of them became stars. Quan, obviously, Gonzalez seem to be here for the long haul now, but you know well about the sophomore slump. The league now has a full book on you. They know where the holes in your swing are. How concerned are you that one of these guys that was a big contributor last year, and you can start with Gonzalez and Quan and add anybody you want, are going to take steps back this year?
I think it depends on the skill set. So with Quan, he's elite at making contact, and he has elite plate discipline. So like his floor is going to be pretty high regardless. And he showed last season. I mean, in May, he was dreadful for about 3 weeks and then didn't go into a slump again after that. So he showed he can make the adjustments. And, you know, I think he's looking more at, if I have such good plate discipline and I'm at the plate and I'm working myself into a hitter's count, I can be more aggressive and maybe swing at pitches that I wasn't swinging at last season. So I think he's set up well to avoid that. Everybody I talk to says Gonzalez is like the biggest wild card or mystery on the team because he's so aggressive and that can get you into trouble. You know, if he thinks he can hit every pitch, pitchers are not going to throw him strikes. So he's going to have to make adjustments to show a little more patience. But at the same time, you want him to be who he is, and you want him to flex that power that he's got. Because if they can get 30 homers from a right-handed outfielder, that's something that this team hasn't had in, I don't know, since Manny Ramirez. So,
yeah, you're right.
So he could go either way. I mean, we've seen that skill set. Like Javi Baez is somewhat similar. And a few years ago, he was runner-up in the National League MVP voting. And last season, he was just pitiful for the Tigers. So you never know. It's all about sort of the skill set you have and how that helps you make adjustments once pitchers get a leg up on you. And I think it's different for everybody. And that's why it's tough to predict. And that's why I keep coming back to you need depth. You need plans in place for if someone falters.
Zach, let's talk about the unfortunate thing here, injuries. The Guardians' bullpen obviously was great last year, basically across the board. Sam Hentges dealing with an injury. I can't remember now off the top of my head what it is. Okay, what's his status and what are we looking at timeline? Do we have anything yet?
Yeah, so they're reevaluating him week to week. He's got shoulder swelling and inflammation, which is just, I mean, that's not what you want to hear about any pitcher. I think, Jay, you dealt with that, right? So I think
I have.
with him, the bullpen is, what's so interesting about it is you had a lot of pitchers who had to go through a trial and error period for the first few months last season. And Karinchak had to prove that he could thrive without the sticky stuff. Trevor Stephan had to go from mop-up guy to a setup man. Hentges had to prove he could go from a failed starter to an elite reliever. You know, did anybody know who Eniel De Los Santos was this time last season? Nick Sandlin had some command issues and had to go to AAA. So there was a trial and error period really till July. And then from July on, they were the best bullpen in baseball by a mile. So you had this season all those guys coming back to where, yes, bullpens are unpredictable year to year, but Tito knew who he could trust. So there was one bullpen opening with Hentges' injury. It's probably going to be 2. And the list of candidates to fill those spots, like I don't know that there's an obvious favorite. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fill those roles. And Hentges was the only lefty out there, so I think that's a big blow.
Yeah. And what's funny is you didn't even mention Eli Morgan, who was probably their second best reliever the first half of the season behind Clase, and he struggled in the second half when everybody else came around, and he's obviously got a good arm too. Speaking of the relievers, Zach, we've talked a lot. There's been a lot of talk about the pitch clock, right? All these baseball changes, I thought I would all hate them. I love them all. I like that the games are going to be faster. As a person who's got to be at every game, I'm sure you're going to enjoy faster games. How are especially Clase and Karinchak adjusting / going to adjust, especially Karinchak, who's obviously like a Al Habrowski, mad Hungarian, crazy man on the field? Are you worried at all about him and some of those bullpen guys who take longer adjusting?
So I haven't seen Clase yet. He threw his first live bullpen today, so he hasn't been in a game. So that we'll have to keep an eye on. Karinchak hasn't had any issues. The only issue he had was he requested a new ball once, and they were supposed to reset the clock when he did it because he did it right away, and they didn't. He got charged with an automatic ball, and he shouldn't have been. But he's had no issues.
Okay.
He told the team's pitching group over the offseason, don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I think he's maybe not – he like bounces the baseball in his hand a bunch, and then he'd go to the hair, the rosin bag, all this stuff. I think he's just sort of limited the extracurriculars in between pitches, and he works quick anyway. It was just the between pitch routine that he's going to have to alter.
Zach, outside of driving the Will Brennan bus, I'm also on the Tristan McKenzie train, I guess you could call it. Is there
because he's the only player that weighs less than Mike.
Probably. That's actually probably fact. Well, Steve, no, I weigh more than Stephen Kwan. Maybe. I don't know, but besides the point.
Yeah.
We had Chris Rose on, talked to the Guardians, and who do we have also from spring training? Mandy Bell. So that she thought that McKenzie could take that next step, be a legitimate Cy Young candidate heading in this season. Is there any chance that at the end of 2023 we're looking at Tristan McKenzie as the best pitcher on this Guardians roster?
Yeah, I think it's totally reasonable to make that prediction. I think he's got one of the best curveballs in the league. If you go look up his numbers hitters have against that pitch, it's unfair. And what's amazing about him is, you think about what makes a pitcher great, and sometimes they need to find the right pitch mix, or they need to just get beat around a little bit and learn how to be effective. But for him, it's confidence. And in 2021, a light bulb went off in the second half, and part of it was respected players around the league like Miguel Cabrera and Salvador Perez told him, hey, you've got really good stuff. Like, you're impressive. So the results weren't always there, but I think you could see he was nibbling a lot that season, and he would get into a jam and wasn't sure how to get out of it. And next thing you know, the bases are loaded with walks, or he'd give up a big home run because he was falling behind in counts. And last season, he was the aggressor, and he'd go with that fastball curveball mix. He mixed in sliders, and I mean, it worked to perfection. I mean, it's unbelievable the growth he's made, considering he didn't pitch in 2019. 2020, he came up and debuted during a season where he really had no business pitching in the major leagues. And 2021, he took his lumps, and last season he was great. So it's been, there were hopes that he could be this pitcher, the top 50 prospect, but you never know if that light bulb is going to go off. And once it does, then you sort of reevaluate things and you start to wonder, okay, this guy proved he can be a really good pitcher. Can he be a Cy Young winner? Can he be a guy we want to sign to a long-term extension? He answered the durability questions by making 30 starts, throwing 191 innings. So, yeah, it's all there. He and Bieber, to me, are like 1A, 1B.
Yeah,
how are Bell and Zunino fitting in locker room-wise?
Bell, well, quieter, I guess, because, Zunino's replacing Austin Hedges, who was, if he was still on the team, you'd probably hear him in the background right now. Bell's a quiet guy. He does a lot of reading. I think they're fitting in seamlessly because they're veterans, and I think they're two of the oldest, if not the two oldest guys on the team now. But they're guys who have been around and who can offer some leadership, some experience, and I think that helps, because even though these guys went through it all last season, this is the first time that they'll have expectations.
Zach, we got to let you go, but before we do, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we do, I just wrap it all up with your win total. Folks are between 85 and 90. Is that where you're sitting right now with this club?
Yeah, I think the balanced schedules, and we're making a big deal out of it. And yes, it'll affect things a little, but I do think we're making too big of a deal of it. I'd say somewhere around 90 makes sense.
I'd take that. I think
Zack,
90 wins the division.
Do you want to talk attendance before you go, or should we avoid that?
Can we go attendance, payroll, special teams coaches? What do you want to talk about?
See you, Zack. Great job, man.
Thanks,
Have
Zack.
fun out there.
Appreciate
Right,
it,
Zack.
Guys.
I think that there's no line on McKenzie to win the Cy Young, which is
I saw it was plus 3,000. I saw one.
well, the ones I looked at, they had the favorites for every team. Obviously, Bieber was the favorite, but I agree with Zack, and I'm just going on stuff. I'm not talking about, I'm not even going to factor in the experience because Bieber clearly is the more experienced pitcher, and he's been there, so he knows what it takes. But just the stuff, the swing and miss stuff that he has. He mentioned his curveball, and he also talked about every pitcher is holding a Rubik's Cube in their hand for the first 3 years, and what they're struggling with is pitch mix. When do I throw the fastball? When do I throw the curveball? He figured it out somewhere around July of last year. I was at the stadium. I talked about this. I was at the stadium for the White Sox game when he had like 16 strikeouts. Start before that, he had over 15. And what I realized in that start was he was beginning to mix his pitches like a veteran, knowing when to overpower guys with the fastball and when to mix it up with the curveball.
I thought the catchers was calling.
They are, but the pitcher drives the bus on that a lot more than they think by how well they're throwing each pitch. And
Well,
the
he was
manager
pitching-
also looks at that, and the pitching coach does too.
And he was pitching with confidence, right?
That's the key.
Yeah.
He got to a point, he clearly was lacking confidence first half of 21.
Yeah.
I always felt like in the back of his mind was because he was a home run, he gave up a lot of home runs. I think that was always in the back of his mind. Pitching coaches will always tell you, you've got to take that out of your mind. It can't be living in the back of your mind. That's like a quarterback who's afraid to throw an interception.
Yep.
You start seeing ghosts start materializing. And with McKenzie, when he stopped worrying about giving up home runs, he's going to give up home runs. He just is. He's that kind of pitcher. But when he stops worrying about it, and he did last year, he was 11-11 last year with his sub-3 ERA.
Yeah.
He can easily be the ace of this staff for the next 5-10 years. And I think he can win a Cy Young.
It's like a shooter in basketball when you're not worried about missing anymore and you can just shoot the ball and let it
go.
fly.
Let it go.
You're
Hey,
confident.
we got a NASCAR report.
We do have a NASCAR report also.